Ever thought about starting an Etsy print-on-demand store because, hey, it's free and easy, right? Wait a minute, there's more to it. Picture this, you're all set to launch your brand new wonderful Etsy store, waiting for those moments, and then hidden costs come creeping up on you from nowhere. Hi there, I'm Daniel, and today we're going to talk about how much it actually costs to start with Etsy and print on demand. We'll discuss everything from setup fees, the tools that I would recommend you invest in, and those sneaky little costs that no one really tells you about in the beginning. So let's dive in and take a look at how much it actually costs to set up your Etsy store. Let's start with the initial setup costs. Now the great news is that setting up an Etsy store and a print-on-demand account are generally always free. But there's a little bit more to it. Something you definitely shouldn't forget about is the Etsy listing fees. Every time that you list a product on Etsy, you get charged 20 cents as a listing fee. It sounds like pocket change, but trust me, it can add up. So imagine you list 50 products in your Etsy store, that equals $10. And also this isn't a one-time fee. Anytime someone purchases one of your products, you have to also pay a relisting fee of those same 20 cents to relist that item. And if a product listing of yours is not selling and it's just sat there gathering digital dust, then you get charged a relisting fee once every 4 months, again 20 cents. Now let's talk about looking good. And I'm talking about your products, not you. You already look great. Professional looking listing photos are absolutely crucial, and that's where great mockups come into play. One of the best places to look for professional mockups is actually right on Etsy. There are a bunch of different stores specifically designed to sell mockups. Anything from t-shirts, mugs, all the way through to anything you're really looking for, you can find a mockup for that. Prices really vary for mockups, and a lot of the times you can actually buy bundles, but to start off with, I would recommend probably investing around $10 to $30 in this just to get you off the ground and get that initial collection of mockups together. So are there any other costs to consider when initially setting up? Honestly, not really. At least not the mandatory kind. But as I mentioned earlier, if you're really serious about making your Etsy store successful, there are a couple of different other investments that I would recommend you take a look at. So let's talk about some of the tools that have proven a worthwhile investment to me and my experience. First up is Canva, a fantastic design tool. I use this myself for my store branding, creating my mockups, and also actually creating the designs for my products. They do offer a free plan for you to get started with, and it's a great starting point, but if you really want to take full advantage of this, I would recommend investing in the Pro plan, which is $12.99 a month, and that unlocks a massive library of assets for you to use, AI tools, and a whole bunch more. So it's worth checking out. Next, we have Etsy research tools such as Everbee, eRank, and Allura. These are tools that you can use to do Etsy research around new product ideas, keyword research, understanding what competition exists out there, and a whole lot more. I personally use Everbee and have seen a lot of success with that so far. They do again offer a free plan, but it is somewhat limited. If you really want to take advantage of the full platform, then they do have a plan for $29.99 a month. Again, it seems like a lot, but for me, it actually paid off fairly quickly. And then we have QuickBooks. Probably the most boring out of all of these tools. Sorry, QuickBooks. But it's been such a massive time saver for me. QuickBooks is essentially a bookkeeping app that can integrate directly with your bank account and can then track all of the ingoing and outgoing different financial transactions. Essentially what this does is it just makes tax season a lot easier on you. So this isn't mandatory, you can definitely still track your revenues and your costs manually, But if you do want to have a bit less of a headache when it comes to that tax season, I'd recommend taking a look at a tool like this. The pricing for QuickBooks really varies across regions and countries simply because different bookkeeping methods and different tax requirements exist across different countries. So for example, in the UK, you can get a plan for fairly cheap, whereas in the US, it's a little bit more expensive. I would suggest that you take a look at the QuickBooks website for your own region to determine if it's something you may be interested in. So I would say that those are kind of the main primary tools that I use on a very regular basis. I also have a couple of nice to have tools that I personally invest in that I would encourage you to check out as well. There is ChatGPT. This is an AI tool that I essentially use as my digital assistant. So ChatGPT helps me to craft really great product listings, help me with SEO optimization, and a whole lot more. The good news is you can get started with ChatGPT completely for free today, which is great news. If you do want to upgrade to the better experience, you do have to pay a $20 subscription per month for ChatGPT Plus. I also recently released a video where I talk specifically around how I use ChatGPT and AI to supercharge my Etsy stores. Be sure to go check that out after this. And then there's some other tools as well, which I definitely recommend that you take a look at. One of them is Kittle, which is a great design tool that I use for some of the more complex designs that I'm working on. And then there's also Creative Fabrica. I personally don't use Creative Fabrica as much, but I know a lot of successful Etsy sellers that do use this platform to acquire different digital assets for them to use in designs. Be sure to take a look at them, see if it's something for you. So aside from the setup costs, when it comes to ongoing costs for tools and software, it can really vary. So you could go anywhere from investing $0 if you're not interested in any of them, to upward of $100 if you want to go full in on these tools. I would recommend you check all of them out and see which ones might be right for you, and then determining what may be worthwhile. Now, if you feel like you're learning something so far and you want to continue learning with me in the future, why don't you hit that subscribe button below so that we can stay in touch and we can go along your Etsy journey together. And I promise there's no hidden fees. And I do also want to mention that I have links to a lot of these tools down in the description below. Feel free to check them out. In the Etsy world, every sale comes with certain costs. We call these transaction costs. It's essentially the price of doing business. Let's take a look at the most important ones, and let's start specifically with our Etsy fees. Etsy is providing you with a platform to organically reach millions of potential buyers, and for this, Etsy charges a fee, which I kind of understand. Now, these fees include the listing fee that we talked about a bit ago. There's also a transaction fee of 6.5%. And then there's also a payment processing fee. Now, this fee varies across different countries. In the US, this is 3% plus 25 US dollar cents. Take a look at what this is in your region if you're not quite sure. And something else to keep in mind is if you live in a country that is subject to VAT, such as the UK or the European Union, then you will also be charged VAT on top of the fees that you are being charged by Etsy. So overall, your Etsy fees are going to be slightly larger or slightly bigger than if you're based, for example, in the US. To get a better understanding of exactly what these fees would look like, I would recommend that you use a Etsy profit calculator. I know that Everbee has a really good one where you can plug in the numbers and see what the specific fees would be depending on what prices you're charging. So let's now take a step back and have a look at how the financial exchange actually happens. When a customer buys something from your store, Etsy processes the payment, deducts those Etsy fees, and then pays you the revenue from that sale. Once that order is recognized by your print-on-demand provider, they'll fulfill it and charge you for the cost of the item and the printing services. So that means that your profit is basically the difference between what Etsy pays you and what you pay your print-on-demand provider for their services. Now let's talk about something that caught me off guard when I first started with Etsy, the Etsy Payment Account Reserve. This is a system where for new sellers, Etsy will hold on to a percentage of the sales revenue until that item has shipped. This is essentially a precautionary measure that Etsy uses to make sure that you're a real person and that there's nothing fishy going on. And they usually keep this reserve in place for 90 days. This means that even after you've made a sale, the revenue from that sale will not immediately be fully available to you. And it can take up to 2 weeks for you to receive that full amount. This delay can impact your cash flow, especially when you're first starting out. Remember, while Etsy is holding your fees in this reserve, you may still need to pay transaction costs for other orders or other operational costs along the way. That's why it's wise to have enough funds set aside to cover the costs whilst the Etsy revenues are being held in that reserve. The good news is, as your store becomes more established and you start getting a history of successful transactions, Etsy will typically reduce this reserve period and ultimately it will be removed. Setting up shop is one thing, but there's always those little sneaky costs that come creeping up on you. Let's take a look at some of the biggies of these sneaky costs now. Depending on how you've set up your returns policy in your Etsy store, you may come across situations where customers would like to return an item or receive a refund. It shouldn't happen all too often, but it may happen, and it's something that you need to account for when it comes to your costs. Etsy ads can be a great way to promote your listings, but only if done correctly. I personally didn't use Etsy ads when I first get started because I frankly didn't know how they worked. But if you do want to consider this, then you do need to consider having a dedicated ad budget that you can invest into ads. And the good thing about this is that you can actually decide what you want the daily cap to be on your ad spend so that there shouldn't be any nasty surprises coming your way. And last but definitely not least, Etsy costs time. From creating designs to managing orders to speaking with customers, it all takes time. I just want you to keep in mind that you will have to invest some time into this, especially in the beginning when you're first getting started. Well folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the real costs of Etsy print on demand. The key takeaway here? There's quite a lot of flexibility in terms of how much you actually want to invest into your Etsy store. Everything that I've shared today is all based on my personal experiences and what has worked well for me. Your situation may look very different. It's crucial for you to assess your own financial situation and to determine how much you're comfortable investing into getting this off the ground. The silver lining is that a lot of these tools that we spoke about today do offer free plans, which means that you can test the waters before you actually invest into them. So take a moment to consider your options, experiment with these different tools, and always keep your costs in the back of your mind. It is so important, especially whilst you're growing your store. If you found this breakdown helpful, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and also like this video as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.